Before we get started today, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of this land, the traditional custodians of the country we are on today, and pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. We celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and the waters of New South Wales. We also acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and colleagues that are joining us today. Okay, so to get started, if you're not lost, you're not much of an explorer. That's what my parents used to tell me when I was a little lad, because I used to get lost a lot, like all the time. My mum claimed I could get lost in my own bedroom, and the walk home from school to home was like a disaster for me, and that's what they used to say to me to make me feel good. And it did make me feel good, right? Because who doesn't want to be an explorer? It's fantastic. But these days it's getting harder and harder to get lost. It's being designed out of us, right? You know, creativity is being designed out of us, and originality is being designed out of us. And that's because we've all got these things. You know, you've got a little navigator on your wrist, and you've got it in your car, and you've got it on your laptop, and it's showing you where to go, which is great, particularly for someone like me who's challenged in that area. But the problem for that is if we're all following this same navigator, we're all going in the same direction. We're all going to the same places, and we're all going in the same way. And that's not being an explorer, that's being more like a sheep. And no one wants to be a sheep. But today's talk is not about, you know, some sad, woe is me, look at where we've come through with technology kind of chat. It's nothing like that. What we'd like it to be is kind of an exciting, rousing, look at what opportunity that represents those people who are prepared to ditch that kind of sheep tech, step aside from the crowd and head off to the promised land, where we have found success and riches and fame and fortune awaits. So what I'd like to start with is a piece of work. I'll show you a piece of work. This was created by a team of people that definitely did follow their gut, and it's probably my most favourite piece of work from my entire career. My daughters love it, my mum loves it, and it's because it's been one of the most awarded campaigns for 2023, the world seems to love it. So we'll start. This is called Fit Chicks.
Free range, open range, cage-free eggs. It's all a bit, yeah, a bit confusing. So we're going to make it a whole lot easier.
Fit Chicks. Tracking our chickens, then printing their steps onto our eggs. We started by designing the world's first step counter for a chicken with GPS and customised software, and we made sure it was user-friendly.
The FitChicks device allows us to track the movement of our chickens across the farm to see how free they really are.
Every week we fit the devices to a group of chickens to get an average daily step count. The results are then printed onto our eggs and delivered nationwide. After turning the humble egg into the newest form of media, we launched a campaign that got egg buyers thinking twice. We even made our chickens famous and put their workouts on Strava.
Our next guest is taking free-range eggs to the next level.
You might be used to counting your own steps each day, but
These girls are clocking up 3 times that amount.
They're fit chicks.
Fit chicks of the farm.
Fit Chicks.
He's strapping fitness trackers onto his flock.
Their fitness tracker for who
Un
knows?
dispositivo che monitora. 也这么转呢。
We even started selling out of eggs. Our farms couldn't keep up.
Farmers need to be clear and honest about their farming methods so that consumers can make an educated choice.
By tracking our chickens and sharing their steps, we brought honesty to a misleading industry, empowering everyday people and farmers to help change the egg industry for good.
So next time you go buy some eggs, go for the honest ones. Better get my steps in.
Your coup.
So that's Fit Chicks. We're incredibly proud of that. I'll introduce you to the team who made that in one moment, but before we do, I'd like to introduce you to my strategic partner, Ali Megamind Tilling, who will take you through some thoughts on going with your gut.
Brilliant, thanks Paul. Can everyone hear me? Ace, that helps. This is going to be a slightly disorientating situation because I've got a talk and a clicker and a microphone, but we're just going to go with it and do what we can. So, this today is a call to guts. This is about, really, we're here today not to reject data, okay? None of us are data haters. We're not data haters either. But we're not here to reject data, we're here to resist the tyranny of it. To consider data of a different kind, and that's gut data, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that is in a minute. But we're going to find the glory in going with your gut. When to do it, how to do it, and how it just might be the superpower that not just separates us from the machines, but is actually humanity's best hope of thriving. That's quite a big call, I realise, but hopefully I'll be able to back that up a little bit today. So gut thinking and gut instinct, it is so much more than we think it is on the face of it. And it goes even beyond the creative industry. So there was a study from Harvard Business Review about 10 years ago that looked at people who had chosen their life partner, their husband, wife, partner, whatever, on gut instinct, and those who'd chosen kind of based on a list of criteria that they kind of had to tick off a list. And the people who'd chosen on gut instinct, their partnership survived like so many more times, and not only survived, but thrived. So this is important kind of in our day-to-day lives as well. Don't come to me for relationship advice, but still. The other thing I think is really interesting about gut data and gut instinct, when you kind of go under the surface level of it, is this is something that has been alive in cultures across the world for centuries. In Maori culture, there's a concept called matakite, which is really kind of heightened intuition. And in that culture, kind of before colonization, if you were matakite, it meant that you were really kind of experiencing this heightened intuition, and you were revered in society because of that. So there's kind of a lot of evidence for how great and important gut instinct and gut data can be. So what actually is going with your gut? And what is it based on? So here, we're going to think about gut thinking as actually a game that your brain needs to play. And to do that, we're going to have to unpack our brains a little bit. So we're used to kind of thinking, the old way of thinking about how our brains worked was that there was kind of the right brain, and that was like the creative bit, and there was the left brain, and that was the analytical bit. And like the right brain people were like cool and creative, and the left brain people were like spotty no mates. And we've kind of got past that a little bit now, and now we know that actually the brain works on two systems, fast and slow. And the fast system of your brain is actually the oldest part of it. It's the limbic part. It's the really primitive part that has to make decisions at top speed, like on gut instinct. But the thing that's interesting about it, you've got to kind of be a little bit wary of your limbic brain, your fast brain as well. Because whilst it's great for gut thinking, whilst it's great for those moments of gut intuition, it also is really tempted by what's familiar to it. So we're going to have to guard against those familiar things and let in a little bit of what's new, as well as kind of those gut instinct feelings and thinking really quickly. And we'll have a bit more of a look at that later on. But you might be thinking, what has all that, that's all about my brain. What's that got to do with my tum-tum? Mine's bigger than I would like it to be, but we'll just hopefully flatten it down a bit. Your stomach is actually your second brain. So our stomachs are lined with neurons, which is the same thing that helps kind of make our brains work. And it's actually the connections between the two that's where things get really interesting. The way that messages go, not only from your brain to your stomach, but actually from your stomach back to your brain. And it's that interplay that really gives us strong gut thinking. So, going with your gut is going with data of a different kind. And to talk about this, we're actually going to look at the gut of Jake Barrow, who's standing over there. Give us a wave, Jake. No, Jake has an excellent gut. Jake is actually our group ECD. So he is part of the brains behind FitChicks, the idea that Paul showed you earlier. And what I want to think about for a second is people like Jake and like Paul, who are creatives, they're kind of top senior creatives. When they have a creative review, they are using their gut to make decisions. So you might think, what happens in a creative review? Well, what happens is all their teams, all the different creative teams, come to someone like Jake with all the ideas that they've slaved over, that like they've created ideas out of nothing, right? And they have to come, and Jake, in that situation, has to choose which ideas are going to go forward. And to do that, he often has to do that like really, really quickly. Creative reviews, you know, they can be half an hour and you've got 20 ideas to go through, and it has to kind of happen at speed. So that is using your gut a lot. But actually, what a gut like Jake Barrows does is uses all the experience and all the kind of decisions he's made before and all the patterns in the data to really help him make those decisions. But he's also looking for that 1%, that one thing that is a little bit new. So you don't want to kind of just go with the flow, just go with what's familiar to you. As much as you need to think about how's that idea going to work, you also need to think about what's different about it. What is going to give me goosebumps about this? What's making my hair, well, not in Jake's case, what's making my cap stand on end? And I think this, for me, is what is really powerful about gut data. Gut data is data that you feel. And I think what's also, like the build on that I would give, is it's not like it's data that you feel and then you go away and analyze it with like a spreadsheet and a calculation. When you feel gut data and you allow yourself to feel it, like that is the analysis. Like the feeling of excitement that you get, or what my mother-in-law calls feeling a bit squirmishy. I think that's quite a charming word. But those are all, you know, the feeling like the hairs on the back of your neck, the goosebumps. That is your brain and your stomach analyzing what you've heard and reacting to it, feeling it. And I think we've got to let more of that in. I think that's what Jake wants to see in every creative review. It's what Roger, who you'll meet in a minute, wants to see in every ideas presentation. It's what I want to see when I kind of talk to my team about strategy. And that's what's exciting about being in creativity. Right, so we've got to let more of that in and really kind of feel the joy of it. Hold on, I'm out of whack here. Got to make sure. And I think it is. It is particularly important because our gut instinct is our value over the machines. It is, to be honest, for a lot of us, I believe, it is what is going to help us keep our jobs. It's what's going to help us stay in our relationships. It's what's going to kind of help us continue to succeed. Because your gut is going to be, your gut thinking and your gut intuition is the final kind of frontier of what a machine can learn. We've seen artificial intelligence. Obviously, everyone in this room will know about that. We've seen how that's developing. We've even started to see artificial empathy. That's kind of the next frontier that's growing. But artificial intuition, I think and believe and hope, is going to be that final thing that separates us from the machines. One distinction that's really important to make is that gut feeling, gut intuition, gut confidence, it isn't just empty bravery. It's a confidence that you get because it is partly that pattern recognition. It is partly the experience of, like in Jake's case, all the other creative reviews he's had, all the work he's made himself, all the ideas that have come to life for him. Gut data, it's noisy and it's mischievous, but it is not reckless and it is not empty. And that's when it dies, is when we don't believe that it's as valid as some of the other data that we see out there. It's part experience. It's part that familiarity, the limbic brain that I spoke about at the start. It's part new and vivid, like a gut catcher. You know, not just something that catches your eye, but something that catches your gut. And you've got to kind of hold on to those moments, I think. Really, the gut thinking helps your brain separate what matters from what doesn't. It can be a really powerful filter in that respect. And we'll see how that worked for FitChicks in just a minute. So how do you know when your gut is leading you astray? So this is kind of this is the word of warning, I guess, in my call to guts, our call to guts. Because we know that, we spoke about earlier, the limbic brain and it being really attached to what is familiar to you. And sometimes we kind of go, oh, my gut feeling, and I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to be that, I'm going to have that confidence to go with what my gut says. And I'm still going to gather some evidence, I'm going to gather some data, but I'm really going to kind of think about what my gut's saying. And that's great. But sometimes your gut is relying really heavily on those patterns that you're used to, on that familiarity, on on some of the kind of confirmation bias, things that you already believe. And we've just got to kind of have our guard up against that, because that's where it starts to become perhaps a bit lazy. So it's really kind of that pattern of, what is my gut saying, and am I letting in just that little bit of something new, something that I haven't seen before? This is the exciting part, actually kind of the thrilling part for me, is like when you go with your gut, you are defying definition. 99% of it is that pattern recognition. It's the experience. It's knowing how to channel what's new as part of that. But we're also interested in that 1%, right? That bit that just knows, that bit that separates us from the machines, that bit that is like the hair on your back of your neck, the bit that's an idea that is so breathtakingly simple that no one's ever seen it before. The bit that carries you through the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs that any creative idea goes through. We know that, like, gut thinking can really help an idea live for the long term. And that's something I think we kind of forget about, the power of that. It's the bit that can make you the money. And it's the bit that you believe in because you know it in your gut, right? So that's our call to guts. Defy definition. And now we're all going to chat a little bit about how that comes to life.
Okay, let's get the rest of the team up here. This is our client, Roger. I am a client who has won every single creative award on earth. Boyd, the general manager of Honest Eggs. And Jake, more guts than a bin chicken Barrow. Come on up, mate. Okay, now let's get straight into this. It's all about a call to guts and sort of trying to learn how to go with our guts. So I'll start with you, Jake. What does going with your gut mean? You don't have to turn it on, buddy. No, just start talking. So what does going with your gut mean, mate?
Well,
mean
Paul,
to you?
I'm so glad you asked me that question. I've actually got two. I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and I've got two answers for you, funnily enough.
Thank you.
When I think about going with my gut, the thing that resonates with me most is something deep down in the pit of me that just knows that something must be done, especially, in terms of, our job and creativity. And it's actually it becomes a bit of a battle. And it's a battle between sensible Jake and creative Jake. And so if we take, for example, the Fit Chicks project, when I first heard that idea, they said, oh yeah, we're going to strap fitness trackers and GPSs to step counters to chickens. And I was like, sensible Jake chimes in. It's like, well, you can't possibly strap a step counter to a chicken, can you? But creative Jake is kind of like, no, we're definitely strapping, fitness trackers to chickens. And creative Jake, sensible Jake said, no, but it's just outrageous. We couldn't possibly, could we? Creative Jake's like, yeah, we're doing it. So it's a bit of a battle, and ultimately it's that just innate urge to want to get this one thing made. And my second answer is...
Before you get to that, mate, I was going to say, in 6 years of working with this man, I don't think I've ever met sensible Jake. But anyway, go on.
I was going to say, didn't sound familiar to me either.
He's the guy that you just give the paychecks to. Right. My other answer is, I don't know. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's coming from a creative, the one half of this equation. You can't make great work without a great client. Does this ring true to you, Rog?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my background's consumer goods marketing all over the world for Fonterra. Been Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Venezuela, Taiwan, New York, everywhere. And, always did a lot of researched the hell out of everything. And, got to the point in my career where, I always needed a lot of context to make decisions. And I used to connect a lot of dots. And I got to the point in my career where I actually felt that I could be, connecting the dots as good as the research could. And I think, going with your guts is really about getting to the point where your subconscious is mulling over all of that stuff all the time, to the point where you have a creative idea like this presented to you, and you have a gut visceral action. You just go, yeah, imagine if we could pull that off. Like that's really where I've got to with my career, and sort of going with your gut.
I love that language of like pull that off. Like it is kind of a bit of a magic trick in a way, isn't it? When the creativity works like that.
Do you know one other thing that always occurs to me is like I feel like I'm getting away with something. Like I feel like I'm just doing something a little bit naughty. Like
a little bit mischievous.
I'm really going to put fitness trackers on chickens.
And that's the thing. Like we've got an audience here, and like lots of clients here, and they will be thinking that this idea of like so often you do feel like you're doing something naughty, and maybe that you shouldn't be doing. Does it? And it's not always going to work. So have you had those experiences? Rog, I'll start with you. Have you had those experiences where you've sort of gone with your gut and it hasn't worked out for one reason or another?
I mean, we were talking about this earlier today. I mean, for me, I guess I'm either overly optimistic or constantly in denial. I'm not sure which one, but I've only ever really had good situations out of going with my gut. I've actually had a lot of bad situations out of not trusting my gut. I got some investors involved in a company one time that I knew I shouldn't have got involved in the company, and they didn't do good things to the company, and that was all because, I was not that healthy at the time, was probably not eating very well, and there's a lot of research now in science on the fact that if you look after your microbiome, that you're actually more intuitive, and you can actually come to better conclusions about things and have better clarity around things. So I think where I haven't trusted my gut, I've found myself in situations that are not so great.
Amazing. I mean, from a personal experience, I've got similar. Like anytime that I haven't, I've always sort of been disappointed in myself. But I think personally, even if I've gone with my gut and it hasn't worked out the way I've thought it would or hoped it would or whatever, I still come away satisfied for some reason. Like the only time I've really felt, hideously disappointed with myself is when I didn't go with my gut and just never found out where that would have taken me. But if I've gone with it and it's gone wrong, I've still always sort of given myself a pat on my back for giving it a go and going with what I believe. Jake, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot also, and I'm similar to Roger. Like I think that the times where I've not gone with my gut is the times that it's gone wrong, and I'm going to get into something juicy.
Do it.
It's just us, right? These 17 cameras aren't recording, are they?
The global team are here.
Yeah, I know, right? This is the part where we see me live lose my job. I'm going to tell you about a mistake I made when I didn't go with my gut, and part of the reason added up to us not winning a pitch. And so, I don't know, Ali got this out of me the other week. She really made me drop my guard.
I did my investigative journalism.
We were pitching, I'm going to say who it is. It was Deliveroo. They're pulled out of this market anyway, so they probably should have gone with us. And they'd still be around, but they didn't.
Losers.
So it was Deliveroo. We had some great ideas, and there was this one idea called Anything Goes. And the moment I heard the idea, it was like absolutely brilliant. And, we went along and developed it up as you would normally develop any creative idea for any campaign. And the execution we landed on for the big TV ad was an all singing, all dancing musical of Anything Goes. Thank you. Partway through the process, I had this little feeling in my gut that was saying, menu log kind of do dancing. And I didn't listen to it. And, we didn't end up winning the pitch. I think the work was still great. But one of their little pieces of feedback was we just weren't sure because menu log do the dancing. So there you go. Massive mistake.
You're fired.
Yeah. But that's let the record reflect that this is the only time I've ever made a mistake in my job.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. Okay, so on the flip side then, when has it made, that's what we're really here for today, when has it made all the difference? Jake, you're on a roll.
Another pitch, and I'm going to talk about one that's active. And it's with Monash University. So Monash University, we've had them as a client for 7 or 8 years, and we do extremely, creative work with these guys. They push us as much as we push them. I don't know, the weird thing is that they're part government funded, so every 3 years they have to pitch it out, and it's all above board fair process run by procurement. Just recently we repitched, and as a part of the process we had to present territories and do a bit of a tissue session with them. So rock up with a bunch of sort of half fleshed out creative thoughts and get their read on what they're vibing. And this time around, because it was so tightly managed by procurement, they weren't really allowed to give too much away. So we actually walked out of that session not knowing what they liked, if they liked anything, were they just being polite. And I didn't say to anyone at the time, but in the cab ride back to the office, I actually didn't know what to do, which was a little bit scary because I'm the guy who's meant to know what to do. And we slept on it and rocked back up to the office the next day, and like my gut kicked in and just said, you know what, we're going to do what we always do for Monash, and that is rock up to this pitch with some absolutely A-class, world-beating, out-of-the-world, creative ideas, absolute creative bangers. And we sort of wiped the slate clean and just said, right, I don't want to see anything that we don't want to, present anything that we wouldn't be super proud to make. And we know what that, that bar is for Monash. Let's just set about and do it. And, there's not a doubt in my mind that if we had have tried to overanalyze and second guess what we got out of that initial tissue session, the work would be as good as what we did when we went with our gut. And that the jury's still out on whether or not we've won the pitch, but
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
But that is what we're talking about. We're talking about putting your money, putting your gut where your mouth is, kind of thing, which seems really weird. But you know what I mean? It is that moment where you kind of go, we're not sitting here with that story telling you that it worked perfectly. We don't know yet, but we believe in it. We thoroughly believe in the work, and we think we made the right decision.
Yeah. And that's exactly, you're going to feel better about that by going with what you believed in and setting the bar really high. Yeah.
And Rod, you were talking about sort of going with your gut, not just on creative work, but on the entire ethos of the business, right?
Yeah, I mean, for FitChicks we did that much research, which was pretty enlightening, and we've won 54 awards. We can't supply the market enough eggs, so we're shorting the market 20% of sales every week, and it's been like that for 9 months. So we're good at a pretty good position, and I think what I guess allowed us to get to that situation is I was a consumer of Honest Eggs Co. before I joined them. I just sent them an email when they were a really tiny company and said, I think I can help you, and went out and saw them. Had got a month's contract, and that turned into 5 years. In fact, I'm still on a month's contract, but it's been 5 years of it. So, and I do own shares now. So, I think getting to that position of being able to make those big calls is about being your own customer as well. And I think that's, I am definitely an Honest Eggs Co. customer. Live their values, live the whole regenerative farming angle, and really love it. So I think you've got to be a customer first and foremost to make those calls.
I think that's awesome. There's that old ad of the guy that loved the shaver so much he bought the company. Yep. It reminds me of that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about AI, and that is obviously the sort of the big, the rising tide against going with your gut. There feels like there's so many opportunities out there for you to get advice, testing, research, ChatGPT to try and help you work out what's right, what's the most creative idea, what's the best way to move this thing forward. Do we think in our hearts that at some stage you are going to be able to get the same kind of intuition, gut instinct out of AI? Ali?
No. Well, at least I hope no. And it's not because I don't think there's some really great things about AI. Even artificial empathy, that's something we've been kind of talking about a lot recently, and it's exciting, right? And it's going to help us in so many ways. But I suppose I think for me it's about the insight. It's about the kind of little kernel of a twist or a feeling that I don't think you can train a machine to have, or at least you can't at the moment. And I think it's also because as human beings we kind of have a very mixed relationship, I think, with gut instinct. We don't quite know, do we, when to harness it and how to use it. How can we reliably kind of teach an AI engine to do that anyway? So I'm going to say I hope not. I think it defies definition, and I'm going to stick with that.
I hope you're right. I was chatting to an AI engineer the other day, and he was talking a lot about how quickly this is coming ahead, but he was basically saying the last 10% is going to be the trickiest, and it's about reliably getting AI to do what you would expect a human being to do in any given situation. And that could be, I imagine, driving a car, or it could be coming up with an idea to, a client-based problem like this. It occurred to me as he was saying that they're trying to design what you would expect a human being to do, but really so much of the most interesting things in life, in fact, I'd say all the most interesting things in life comes from human beings doing what you least expect them to do. So it feels like even once they've got that sort of AI humming to do what you'd expect, who's going to come up with, I don't know, the next Harry Potter, the next Fit Chicks, that thing that's not in the zeitgeist, the thing that people aren't talking about and aren't doing, that really the entire global community, storytelling, human nature flocks to. So I don't know that it'll never happen, but I think it's a long, long, long way off. Jake, what do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe this is slightly naive, but I think the best result AI could probably give us from a set of problems like, we were faced with honest eggs is like a best practice solution. And best practice only exists because someone was creative enough to think of that new sort of level in the first place. So if we just stop at best practice now, that's actually the antithesis of creativity. So I think we're always going to miss out if we don't keep pushing and break new barriers.
I reckon that's right. Like, there's no... I can think of not really any instances of progress or change, like real profound change, that have happened when we were certain of what it was we were doing. And we've kind of seen an example of that, to be honest, over the weekend, haven't we? Yeah. And I think, we've got to be better in a way at kind of embracing that bit of uncertainty. Like, you can't always lay it out on a plate for people and say, this is exactly what's going to happen if you do this exact thing. Nothing changes if you do that. It's more of the same. Yeah,
I agree. And Jake, you were talking, I think that other bit that I just loved, you said earlier today, like computers, AI, technology aren't going to be able to make these giant leaps, these gut instinct leaps, until they can have the hair stand up on the back of their neck.
Until they can have hair stand up on the back of their necks, have nausea in the stomach, and a cheeky little vom before a meeting. They got
often
nothing.
does that leave?
Great.
Butterflies and a cheeky little vom. Okay, so we'll go to the last question, and then we'll take some questions if there are any. And let's just go for a few tips. Rog, let's start with you. What's a few tips of going with your gut to clients, business leaders out there?
For me, maybe for the client side, is stay healthy. That's number one for me. I know that when I'm healthy, I'm making better, clearer decisions, and I'm more intuitive about what will work. And be your own customer. That's a major thing for me. Like, be in the market and be so immersed in that what you're selling that you actually you know what resonates. I relayed to the guys earlier today that over the weekend I watched NXS Kick. The NXS documentary, and talked about the fact that Kick was turned down by the record label management. And I was just sitting there just going, God, imagine if we didn't have Need You Tonight and all those songs that are on Kick. Like, babies wouldn't have been born for some of that. So, and it was turned down, but the person who got it done was the manager who was immersed in the pub scene, immersed in what NXS is, and he knew exactly what, the band needed to do now, and he fought like hell to get it done. So I think, he was going with his gut, even though it was different and unique and all those sorts of things. And I think, just think about that, because, if you turn down stuff and you research it to death, then you're not going to get an excess kick and all that sort of wonderful creative.
I love that. At least one of my daughters wouldn't have been born. Jake.
I've got a tip, one for the creatives probably. I'll just say don't ever not share creative ideas because there's something about it that you can't explain. And I think that's the very beauty about being a creative in the advertising industry especially. We're not looking for a logical answer based off a set of data inputs. We're looking for something that has got a bit of mystery and magic about it. So always share it, and can always can always just brutally shoot you down afterwards.
Love it. Ali?
Well, I'll build on that with one for kind of strategists out there, because we do have to have some data inputs, right? We do need some evidence for the strategies we're going to put forward. But I would say it's kind of, we've got to build from those kind of those numbers, those little bits of information. You've kind of got to tap into the collective gut a little bit and kind of go, what's the reason behind those pieces of information? Like, what's the kind of the little nub of it, the bit of twisted thinking that I can give to someone like Jake, and I then know that it is, it's got enough evidence that we can take it forward, but it's got that thing that's going to give us the hairs standing up on the back of our neck. So I'd say that it's collective gut. And the thing is, to get to the collective gut, which sounds a bit horrible now that I come to say it, but, like to think about kind of what's the gut instinct, what's going to chime with everyone kind of out there, that does mean we have got to get out from behind the warm glow of the laptop screen and actually kind of go and find out. And I think that's part of what hones your gut instinct, right? Like Roger said, it's keeping yourself healthy, but it's making sure that what's kind of in your gut, what's in your brain, you're feeding it the right things in a way.
It's so true, and you do that so well. I would just sort of chime in on something that, and it's quite a good way of sort of finishing the questions, I think, at the end of today, is the best way to be an explorer and go with your gut is to surround people who are, surround yourself with people who are explorers and who go with their gut, because nothing kills this instinctual idea, nothing kills this bravery faster than being in a room full of people that just poo-poo ideas, that don't want to hear the crazy idea that you haven't quite got a solution for yet. And I'm very fortunate to work, the global creative team that I work with, we run very big businesses across the world, and we still rely on each other to be able to, we trust each other enough to be able to say the silly thing, say the stupid thing that we don't quite understand where it's going yet, but we know there's something there. And, honestly, sometimes grown men, grown women saying things that are just abjectly ridiculous because we know there's something there and we trust the people in the room to help us get from A to B. And I guess it's a great way to finish. We're all marketing professionals. You need to have a think about, where are you designing your life? Are you your professional life? Are you designing it to embrace that sort of tech side of the business that helps jostle us and guide us kind of to the middle in so many cases, unfortunately? Or are you prepared to take a few risks, really understand that lizard brain part of our sort of internal psyche that allows us to make these magical leaps that these guys have made? I know, I'm very lucky to work with a whole bunch of people that are in the latter. So, but that's a decision you guys will have to make. So thank you for having us. And now we'll hand over to questions. If there are any.
Going with your gut, you sort of think it's instinctive and you do it immediately. How often is it that what your gut immediately tells you, once you've slept on it or thought about it a bit more, your gut's telling you something different?
I think there's this. What is the saying? Go with your gut. Go with your gut is almost like go with your first instinct. So I hadn't have sort of like a scientific answer for what you're saying. All I would say, and I think once again, it's been a recurring theme tonight, is this idea like we have this immense radar, this incredible compass inside us, and that first thing, you say you like someone first off the bat. It doesn't take a lot of words to work out whether you really lean into someone or you really lean away. I just think that's another example of going with your gut. It's how often would you say, I really didn't like that person the first three words I spoke to them, but then I really liked them an hour later. It doesn't usually work like that, So as I said, it's not always going to be right. We get it wrong sometimes, but it is a very accurate, and it's like a muscle. Like the more you use it, the more attuned you get to really listening to it and understanding how powerful it can be.
I think there's a lot of rights in the world as well, just going down different paths, right? So I think, I wouldn't, it could be, Fit Chicks could have been one path, there could have been another couple of paths that would have been right for it as well. So,
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I thought you were going to try and make me say matakite again. Fleurs from New Zealand and my Te Reo Maori pronunciation is not very good. Was it wrong? Oh. No, I reckon it's a good way to... I think if you do have that test, like we quite often do say the whole, like, sleep on it. So what's your initial reaction, then sleep on it, right? And something I've kind of started doing a bit more of is when my having slept on it reaction is different to my first reaction, I kind of try and ask a little bit why that's the case. Like, have I, because it's hard to know sometimes, isn't it? Have you been persuaded out of something or persuaded yourself out of something for actually a good and legitimate reason, or is it actually because you are a little bit scared, or you're kind of like, I don't know how I'm going to actually make that happen, or... So I think it can be a good little provocation almost to yourself to try and sort out why you've got that that tension in your own head.
Can I just add too, a part of this, like, just because you go with your gut, it doesn't mean you have to be right as well. Like, something I was chatting to Ali about the other week is, like, a part of being a good creative director is also being emotionally detached from your work as it is being emotionally attached to it. So if I know that something's really, really cool, like, you know, a fitness tracker for, you know, chickens, I might think that's the best thing in the world. But if Ali can tear it down strategically, then I'm kind of wrong. And that's why, like, people like me really rely on people like Ali to, you know, have, you know, robust challenges of ideas and work.
Which is lucky.
Can I just add to that? As you were talking, I just think a fascinating thing about, you said, like, Ali, that kind of overnight test. I just think another really interesting thing about gut instinct is that you are reacting to a finished recipe of, like if you go, I instinctively like this, you like all the elements of it. Because I say that because how many times do we in a room go, I love that made me laugh, and then set about changing it? You know, and we don't realise what we're doing because we think as we knock the funny edges off, we knock the provocative edges off, we knock the bit that made us nervous off, we think the bit that we love is going to remain throughout that journey, but it's not. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it never does, but it's very, very, very rarely. So you need to, that first instinct, the bit that you're talking about, that first gut instinct, it's for the whole of the thing that you've just seen. And you've got to protect that, because as soon as you start knocking bits off, if we'd done this and we just didn't put the steps on the eggs or whatever it might be, which was not an easy thing to do, but if we'd just not done that bit, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good. So
I reckon that's so true. We talk so much about short-term thinking and long-term thinking and like all that kind of marketing effectiveness chat, but actually your gut instinct, like your initial belief in a whole idea, like you just outlined, like that can actually be, it feels like such a short-term thing, doesn't it? Like, what's my gut reaction, that moment, that second? But actually, like, that is what protects something so precious for the whole long term. Like, if you guys if we hadn't believed in this and taken it through, it's, you know, inevitably there's ups and downs and ins and outs, right? Like, it is the best, it's almost the best form of long-term thinking that we've got, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like it.
Roger, this one's for you. So I'm going to ask you about the moment they pitched this to you. So I'd like you to have a think about that now so you can remember that moment when they pitched that to you. But what I'd really love to explore is, like, so they pitch it to you in the room. What's the gut and the sort of practical brain tell you in that meeting, and how do you unpack it and get to the point where you go, this is a great idea?
Well, as I said, I'm a customer of Honest Edsco first and foremost, right? So my first reaction was, that's an incredibly awesome idea. How the hell are we going to pull that off? So my first reaction was worry about the chickens, because, you know, we're about animal health and all that sort of things as well. Can we do it in a way that doesn't interfere with their lives and, you know, all that, those sorts of things? But I inherently knew that it was really, really good, and it would resonate with a lot of people in terms of showing how free and healthy our chickens are. And, you know, it's really hard to do in a world of eggs. Like, a lot of people are misguided and misled down this path that free range is free range. But it's a big dirt patch down the big side of a big barn. So with regenerative farming, you know, we move our sheds every week to fresh pasture, and it, you know, creates an abundance of their food, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to do it. straight away. That's where I got to straight away.
I'd add to that, like, you've probably heard Roger say this a lot, but he keeps saying, I'm a customer, I'm a customer, I'm a customer. And that's I can't tell you what a difference that makes. And we have to do this with creatives as well. So often as creatives are learning their trade, they come in, the first things creatives make are things that they like, right? So you'll say, make an ad that does this, and they'll just start writing about things that they like, and then they learn to make ads. And pretty soon, if they're not smart or get really good direction, they start to make ads rather than things that people will like because they've forgotten to be that customer, that empathetic human being. You know, I can't tell you how many times over my career I've said to a young creative person who's presenting me something, I said, would you like that? Would you notice that ad? Would you engage with it? You're the target audience. Would you engage with that? And they go, no, because they've just made an ad. You know, and I'm like, if it's not going to engage, if it's not going to get through to you, you're the customer, then it's not going to get through to anybody else. So it's about, I think that's just such a wonderful thing about Rogers, the way he doesn't listen to it. Is it an ad that I like? Does it tick boxes? He just goes, will that get through to our customers and solve a problem for us, that, you know, something that's important to us as a brand? And it just makes such a massive difference to the final product. We've got time for one more, apparently.
Thank you, that was great. But I was pondering, it's often not the marketers who don't want to trust their gut, it's the rest of the organisation who you kind of can't walk into a boardroom and say, trust me, I've done this for 30 years, my gut's telling me this is going to work. They're usually asking for demonstrations, proof that it can work, and particularly in situations when they're more conservative than the idea is. So I'm interested in anyone's experience in selling on gut in environments where the expectation is prove to me it's going to work.
I mean, just as a sort of right off the bat, there is no doubt in my mind that the bigger the organisation and the more shareholders, stakeholders, the more money at stake, the harder it is to go with your gut. That's just a natural sort of truth to the way the industry works. I would also say that one of our biggest global clients, just as an example, who has highly researched and tested every single piece of work basically throughout history, is in the process right now of unpicking that. But it's got to be an organisational shift. You know, I don't think that, you know, most of your average marketers can't flip that overnight themselves when, as you say, they've got, you know, years of professional culture that sort of wars against that. But I just think that's why we're talking to people like you and trying to make that impact, because if you just start taking those baby steps, and it might be that like certain parts of your marketing still has to be highly tested, researched, and you set aside a small section of your marketing budget that you're going to be a little bit more risky with, a little bit more interesting with, whatever it might be, and see how that goes. You know, those little baby steps, suddenly you might be going, wow, look, everyone's talking about the bit that we took the risk with, and it's not making quite as big an impact with the stuff that, you know, ticked all the boxes. And as I said, this is not us going against stuff that ticks all the boxes. It's very important marketing as well, but none of that exists if people don't notice it. So, I don't know, I hope that starts by answering your question. It's not an easy process, and we've got very close client partner friends that we're trying to go on this journey of changing that as we go, realising we can't flip it overnight, but we're all just trying to, you know, be a bit better every day. Anything else?
I was just going to add to that. I think I'll use myself as focus group of one. Like when I've had a gut instinct about something, when I believe in it in my gut, it makes the case better. It makes me believe it. Like I still have to gather the evidence, and certainly in what I do, that's definitely really important. Like gather the data, gather the evidence. But if I've got more of a stronger kernel of belief, I guess, to start with, if I have had the goosebumps, and I want other people to have them, then that case is only going to be stronger. So I suppose that's kind of part of it, is kind of trying to capture the gut instinct in a way can be the thing that for you helps make the outward case stronger, I guess.
I would definitely agree with that. From a creative perspective, a lot of the times when I'm relying on my gut, it's just to give me that initial, oh wow, there's something really exciting about this. And then once we do give it the overnight test or whatever put it through the alley rigor, it normally just builds the case, and it's just that initial sort of gut reaction that tells us to go after this thing and really put the rigor around it. And more often than not, the gut's right.
Makes the rigor better.
Okay, I'm getting a huge wind up from the back of the room. So thank you so much for everyone for all your time and for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you.